Let's begin right there, Andy. What do you make of this move here, Devin Williams across town to the New York Mets?
I make of it from Devin Williams' perspective that he adjusted tremendously to New York over the course of the season. I mean, this was not working in New York at a certain point, and I did hear from Yankees people that he got noticeably more comfortable and at ease in this city and in this market towards the end of the year. And the other thing I make of it is that he's willing to sign without knowing his exact role. Because he's either going to be, it's high leverage is the right word. Whether that's the 8th inning, the 9th inning, obviously that all depends on what's to come in the Mets bullpen signing. So the Mets benefited from Williams' willingness to be flexible there too.
Right, and you mentioned, listen, it was a rough go for him at the beginning with the Yankees. What was, when you look at him a little bit closer, Liz, what was behind the up and down 2025 season in the Bronx?
Yeah, I think that we call it a down year, but in a lot of ways there are a lot of positives too. So some of the stats did stand out as still top of the market, top of the league. So like expected opponent average, for example, whiff rate, those are still really good. But then when we look at exit velo, barrel rate, essentially the quality of contact against his pitches, that's where we see some of the issues coming. So I did a little digging, and the changeup seemed to be great still. It was the fastball that was an issue. So it's going to be up to the Mets analytics staff and pitching staff to fix it. They're going to have a lot more information than I do from looking at Baseball Savant and things like that. But what I did notice is that for the first time, the induced vertical break was in the negative, which is not necessarily a good thing for a four-seam fastball. And also in the prior year, he was really placing it in different spots at the top of the zone. This year was really kind of just in one spot. So if he's able to kind of make it dance around, move around a little bit, maybe get some of that vertical break back, that could help. Also in prior years, he used the changeup even more than 50% of the time. Last year, I think it was 52%. But if he increases that changeup usage, that might also help.
One of the things we know about Devin Williams, when that air bender is going well, it's one of the most lethal pitches in all of baseball. But we also know this. Adjusting to New York can be a really big deal and a difficult deal. So it's not for everybody, David. How do you assess his time here in New York so far?
Well, I think the good thing about his first year in New York is the fact that it's now behind him. Because when he came over to the Yankees, his world was just kind of torn apart. I mean, he was going into his free agency year, and he just gets traded to an entirely new team. I don't think he was happy about that. It was pretty obvious when he showed up for spring training. He didn't seem very happy. He also got traded to a team that had a no-beard policy, and he was pretty fond of his facial hair. You know, we kind of joke about it now, but it was a big deal. It was a big deal to him. Yes. And we saw the Yankees change their whole policy, a half-a-century policy to, partly to adapt to him, and I think he was more comfortable with that. But it really took him a while, and you mentioned how he did get better towards the end, and I think it did take all that time for him to do that. As unhappy as he was with the new surroundings, when you throw in his struggles on top of that, he lost the closer job, on top of it. So that was pretty rough. He had never really been through anything like that during his time there. Being booed in the Bronx is no fun. That happened to him frequently. That makes it very difficult to go to work there. But here's the positive, and certainly from the Mets standpoint, he finished strong at the end, so he certainly was figuring things out. Like you mentioned, high leverage. He wasn't a closer then. Right. The other part is he's kind of made it out through the other side. He's been through the worst part New York has to offer. Now I think he can be confident with that, and the Mets are getting a battle-tested, New York-tested relief pitcher now, and I think that's a huge plus.
So we heard about this deal originally. I think that the question everybody had, what does it mean for Edwin Diaz? I think that's the big thing that still hangs out there, Andy.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean a ton for Diaz, Gary, in that the Mets have always been after multiple back end of the bullpen, high leverage relievers. So it's very clear that they are still on Edwin Diaz. Now, having said that, and I believe that when I hear it, but the Mets do have a little bit more leverage over Diaz now because they have another all-star closer on their team. They need multiple relievers from where the bullpen was at the end of last year, and they still want Diaz. And I think if they can agree on term, which is always a big if, Diaz does want them. But it's like if you sign another guy that can play first, that helps you in the Alonso negotiations. There's no denying that they're not desperate for Diaz anymore.
Liz?
Yeah, I just think that the Williams signing, it gives the Mets so much security because they don't have to sign Diaz now. I would love for them to, because could you imagine Williams as the setup guy and then Diaz the closer? That's incredible. Or if one of them is kind of having an off year or they're doing better, you can kind of flip them. So it kind of provides you with two closers, which is kind of the dream. So I would love to see both of them on this team.
I wonder if for whatever reason they don't bring Edwin Diaz back, he goes elsewhere. Is there somebody else on the market or multiple people on the market, David, that you would like to see in a Mets uniform?
Well, for one, don't replace Diaz, right? I mean, I know we talked about Devin Williams as being, give them a kind of a safety blanket now in case the Diaz thing doesn't happen. So the closest thing free agent-wise is you're talking about Robert Suarez. I mean, that's the next step for them, and I certainly believe they would pivot to him. But if not, you can leave Williams in a closer role. Maybe you go for somebody like Pete Fairbanks, who's a veteran leverage guy that you can bring into the bullpen too. So Suarez is the number one guy that you would bring in there for Diaz, but you may have to get creative. And Williams is a guy who I believe can close. The Mets certainly feel that way. So, you know, I think we'll wait and see. Diaz is the priority at this point, but as we're just watching Suarez there, he's up to the job too.
He is up to the job. He's really good at what he does. One of the things we know about Edwin, and we talk about this as well when it comes to Devin Williams, he's thrived here in New York City. Yep. When the Trumpets play out at Citi Field, that's magical, right? And certain guys have the ability to live up to the moment. He's got that. Do you risk, if you lose Edwin Diaz, do you risk losing a guy who you know can get it done at the back end?
You know, honestly, Gary, yes and no. I think those trumpets made Edwin a lot of money the first time. And I think that if you bring in a closer who doesn't have trumpets and whose stuff is just a little bit down from Diaz, he probably still converts most of the saves. And Edwin Diaz, look, this is not to criticize him as anything that's not well known, but he's also, like, he single-handedly tanked the Mets playoff run in 2019. Like, he's had ups and downs. So I don't want to cast him as somebody who's like this perfect New York guy and it's been a spotless record. We know he can pitch here, but we know he can also struggle here. Sure. And I think that would describe a lot of relievers on the market.